I woke up to voices, not light. My eyes wouldn't open. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. But I heard everything. The first voice I recognized was my sister Taryn. Cold, flat, certain. She said, "If she's brain dead, pull the plug. Her kid's better off." Then my mother, Velma, her voice tighter, like she'd rehearsed it. "It's time we fix her mistakes." I wanted to scream, to fight, to ask what mistakes they were talking about, but I couldn't even twitch a finger. I thought I was alone in the room with them, listening to them talk about ending my life like I was already gone. But I wasn't. And then I heard another voice. Smaller, closer, warmer. "Mom, I've been writing down everything they said. Want to hear it?" It was my son, Kieran, my quiet, brilliant 11-year-old, the only one who believed I was still in there, still alive. That's when everything changed. Before the accident, my life wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was mine. Every morning started the same. I'd get up before the sun, pack my son's lunch, and comb his hair while he yawned over a bowl of cereal. Then I'd walk him to the school bus, wave as it pulled away, and race to catch the train downtown. I worked as a paralegal for a small firm that treated me like an invisible cog in the machine. Long hours, low pay, high stress. But it paid the rent. We lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin and the hot water never lasted long, but it was ours. It was safe. And it was a home I'd built for Kieran with no help from anyone. I'd been raising him alone since he was 3. His father, Julian, left after one too many arguments about responsibility and money. He said I was too much stress, and that being a dad wasn't what he'd signed up for. I didn't cry when he left. I just locked the door behind him, picked Kieran up from daycare, and started over. Kieran was my reason for everything. He wasn't loud or needy like other kids. He paid attention to everything. If I was running late, he'd pack his own backpack. If I forgot dinner, he'd quietly microwave leftovers. He was the kind of child who noticed the bags under my eyes and said things like, "You should take a nap, I'll be quiet." He was only 11, but sometimes he seemed older than I was. I knew I wasn't the kind of daughter my family wanted me to be. My mother, Velma, never let me forget that. She believed in structure, appearances, and obedience. She thought I had wasted my potential. She liked to say I had too much pride and not enough patience. My sister, Taryn, was the opposite of me in every way. She had the suburban life, husband, house, yoga classes, Sunday brunches, and she made sure I knew how chaotic she thought my life was. Every family dinner ended with her making some passive comment about Kieran's clothes or asking if I'd finally thought about letting Mom help raise him. Help was never just help in our family. Help came with judgment. Help came with a price. Help meant surrender. That's why I built a life on my own, no matter how hard it got. I didn't want my son to grow up thinking we were broken. I wanted him to see that even if things weren't easy, we still had love, and we still had each other. But even love wasn't always enough to keep me going. There were nights when I cried in the bathroom, trying to muffle the sound with a towel. There were mornings when I stared at my reflection and didn't recognize the woman looking back. I was exhausted. Mentally, physically, emotionally. Some days I felt like I was drowning just beneath the surface, smiling while I sank. I remember one night, after a long shift and an overdue rent notice shoved under the door, I slumped onto the couch and whispered, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Kieran was sitting nearby drawing in his sketchbook. He didn't look up, but I knew he heard me. 10 minutes later, he brought me a cup of water and a sticky note. It said, "You're doing good, Mom. I see you. I love you." That was the kind of child he was. That's the kind of bond we had. Quiet, strong, real. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and I believed that was enough. Until the crash. Until I found myself in a hospital bed, paralyzed, helpless, and hearing my own family speak about me like I was already dead. That's the thing no one tells you about survival. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the pain or the healing. It's realizing the people closest to you never really believed you'd make it. Before the accident, I thought I had something close to control. I thought I had proven myself, that I didn't need rescuing or fixing. I thought I had earned a little respect, even if it wasn't always spoken out loud. I thought wrong. In that hospital room, lying still while they discussed my fate, I realized something deeper than betrayal. I realized that my silence gave them permission. They mistook my exhaustion for weakness, my independence for recklessness, and when I couldn't speak for myself, they didn't wait. They decided who I was and who I wasn't. They decided what would happen to me. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't even imagine, was that Kieran was right there, listening, watching, taking notes, because while they thought I was gone, he knew better, and he was the only reason I survived what came next. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I was driving home from work, already running late to pick up Kieran from school. The sky was overcast, traffic was thick, and I had a headache pulsing just behind my eyes. I remember checking the time on the dashboard. I was going to be 10 minutes late, again. That's the last thing I remember. I woke up to pain, but it was distant, like something happening in another room. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move, but I could hear. The first sound was a beeping monitor, then footsteps, then voices, none of them familiar at first. I heard someone say, "Severe brain trauma. No verbal response. Condition stable but non-reactive." I didn't know where I was, but I knew what they were saying. They were talking about me. Eventually, I heard a voice I did recognize. Taryn's. She was standing near my bed, speaking to someone, probably a nurse or a doctor. She sounded calm. Too calm. If she's brain dead, pull the plug. Her kid's better off. She's been struggling for years. He shouldn't have to grow up like that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wanted to scream. I tried to speak. I tried to lift a finger, a toe, anything. Nothing moved. Then I heard my mother, Velma. Her tone was different, more solemn, like she was delivering a prayer instead of a decision. It's time we fix her mistakes. Maybe this is the Lord's way of giving Kieran a second chance. He needs a proper home, a real foundation, not chaos. They weren't mourning me. They weren't hoping I'd come back. They were preparing to erase me, to rewrite everything I had worked for, everything I had survived. They were ready to bury me without even waiting to see if I was still here. The words stung more than any injury ever could. They spoke with such finality, like I was already gone, like I hadn't been fighting every single day to keep myself and my son afloat. I felt helpless in a way I had never felt before. My own family stood inches away from me, debating my future like I was a failed experiment. They thought I couldn't hear them. They thought I was gone, but I was there, trapped. And then, in the middle of their conversation, I heard a chair scrape against the tile, soft footsteps, smaller ones. "Mom." It was Kieran. I recognized his voice immediately. That one word broke through the fog of fear and despair. He sat beside me. I couldn't see him, but I could feel something change in the air. He wasn't crying. He wasn't panicking. He was calm, like he knew I could hear him. "I've been writing down everything they said," he whispered. "Want to hear it?" That moment split my world wide open. While my mother and sister were deciding when to end my life, my son was documenting their every word. He didn't just believe I was still in there. He was protecting me the only way he knew how. He read softly from his notebook. "Aunt Taryn said, 'Her kid's better off without that chaos.' And Grandma said, 'We'll give him the life she never could.'" Then he paused. "But I don't want that life," he said. "I want you." I felt something shift inside me. I focused harder than I ever had before. I willed my body to respond. I clenched my jaw, strained my neck, begged my fingers to move. Nothing happened, but the need to reach him, to tell him I was still here, grew louder than the pain. The next time Taryn returned, I heard her say, "He should stay with me while we sort this out." You know how unpredictable she was, always behind on rent, barely managing. Kieran needs structure. Velma agreed. "We'll pray for guidance, but we can't let her drag him down with her." I wanted to tear through the silence, to yell that they were wrong, that I was still here, that I had never given up, but all I could do was listen. Again. Kieran stayed longer than anyone else. Every night he sat beside me and read. Not just what they said, but stories he made up, updates from school, thoughts from his day. It was as if he was building a bridge back to me piece by piece, word by word. One night I heard him whisper, "I know it's hard, but if you can move just a little, I'll see it." "I promise." He held my hand and waited. That night something changed. The silence I had been buried in started to crack. The darkness loosened its grip. Somewhere deep inside, I felt the faintest spark of possibility. My family thought I was finished. My mother saw judgment. My sister saw inconvenience. But my son? He saw me. That was the beginning of my return, not to life, to voice, to truth, and to the fight I didn't know I still had in me. Every day, Kieran came to the hospital with his notebook. He carried it like armor, tucked under his arm, the pages slightly worn, the corners curled. He would pull up a chair beside me, slide his fingers through mine, and talk as if I could answer him. Sometimes he read the things he'd overheard. Sometimes he read what he wrote about school, his favorite parts of the day, or even a silly dream he had. But he always ended the same way. "I know you're still in there, Mom. Just let me know when you're ready." At first, I thought he was just coping, trying to find comfort in routine. But he meant it. He believed I could hear him. And somehow, I held on to that belief too. The doctors called my state unresponsive. They told my family there had been no significant improvement. They talked about timelines and options. They suggested next steps in quiet tones, never expecting me to hear any of it. But I did. One afternoon, I heard Taryn arguing with a nurse outside my room. She said it didn't make sense to keep dragging things out, that it was cruel to keep Kieran hoping for something that wasn't going to happen. Inside, I burned. Every word was gasoline, and I couldn't do anything but feel it catch fire in my chest. That night, Kieran came in and placed something different on the side table. It wasn't his notebook this time. It was a drawing. A simple sketch of a woman sitting up in a hospital bed, reaching out, her son beside her with a wide smile. On the bottom, he had written, "Not today, but maybe tomorrow." That's when I made the decision. I was going to come back. No matter what it took, no matter how hard it hurt, I was going to find my way back to my son. I don't know if it was adrenaline or rage or the fact that I had finally stopped being afraid, but I started concentrating every ounce of energy into one single command. Move. I focused on my right hand. I couldn't feel it, but I imagined it. I pictured my fingers twitching, my skin stretching. I tried again, over and over. I was exhausted, but I wouldn't stop. Not now. Then, in the quiet of that evening, Kieran was reading aloud from his notebook. His voice was soft but steady. "She said you were unstable, that she always expected you to collapse under the weight of your life." Grandma just nodded. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to hold him. I wanted to make him forget they ever said any of that. And then it happened. My index finger moved. It was a tiny motion, barely there. But to me, it was everything. Kieran stopped mid-sentence. He looked at my hand, then again. His eyes widened. "Mom." He grabbed my hand gently and stared at it like it had just spoken. "Do it again if that was you." I tried. My hand twitched again, slightly more this time. He jumped up and shouted for the nurse. She moved, her finger moved. I saw it. I swear the nurse rushed in, checking monitors, speaking fast into a headset. More people came. A doctor shone a light into my eyes. I couldn't react yet, but I felt the energy shift. They knew something was different. Later that night, when the room was quiet again and the tests had calmed down, Kieran leaned in close. "I knew you were still in there." I told them, "You're coming back, aren't you?" I couldn't speak yet, but I wanted him to know I heard every word. I focused again. This time, both fingers moved, just a little. He smiled. Not the polite smile he used around adults, not the tight one he gave my mother. This was his real smile, the one I hadn't seen since the accident. "I'm not going to let them decide for you. I wrote everything down, even the stuff they don't know I heard. You can read it when you wake up." In that moment, I didn't feel trapped. I didn't feel weak. I felt like I had just taken the first step out of the grave they had started digging for me. The next morning, I blinked on command. The day after that, my hand moved again. Small progress, but progress. Taryn didn't say much. She stayed away. Velma prayed louder. She told the nurses it was a miracle, as if her faith had brought me back. But I knew the truth. I had returned because my son never gave up on me. Not once. I wasn't just healing, I was preparing. I was preparing to come back to the world and take back my voice, to reclaim my name, to show them I was not a mistake that needed correcting. I was a mother who had been fighting long before the accident. And now, thanks to my son, I was fighting harder than ever. The first words that came out of my mouth were barely a whisper, but they were mine. It took weeks of therapy, speech pathologists, physical therapists, neurological exams. Every movement I made felt like learning to live in a new body. My muscles were weak, and my thoughts came faster than my voice could follow. But I was alive, fully, completely, undeniably alive. The day I spoke again, Kieran was beside me. He had just finished reading me a short story he wrote about a dragon and a girl who wouldn't stop fighting, even after the whole kingdom gave up on her. As he turned the page, I managed one word. Hey. He froze. He looked at me like he wasn't sure if he'd imagined it. Then I said it again, louder this time. Hey. Tears filled his eyes. He dropped his notebook on the floor, leaned in, and hugged me so tightly it hurt. I knew you'd come back, he said. So did I. From that point forward, there was no turning back. My body began to respond faster. I could sit up on my own, then move my legs. My voice came in waves, strained but clear. I started talking more each day. I could finally say everything I had been screaming silently for weeks. Doctors called it a remarkable recovery. Nurses stopped in to tell me how strong I was. They all said it was my willpower. But I knew what it really was. It was Kieran. His belief in me had kept my mind tethered to this world when everything else had tried to drag me under. One morning, a nurse wheeled me outside to get fresh air. It was sunny, but cold. Kieran sat beside me, his notebook in his lap. He opened it and said, "I think you're ready for this now." He handed it to me. The first page was a date, the day of the accident. Then a quote, "If she's brain dead, pull the plug. Her kid's better off." Aunt Taryn. I turned the page. "We can't let her drag him down. He needs a real chance." Grandma Velma. Every page held a piece of the truth, not just the words they said, but the tone, the context, the way they looked when they said them. Kieran hadn't just written down what happened. He documented the betrayal. As I read, I felt a deep, steady fire build inside me. I had always believed I had to earn their approval, that maybe someday they'd see I was doing my best. But reading those pages made everything clear. They hadn't doubted me because I was weak. They doubted me because it was easier than admitting I'd survived without them. I hadn't lived by their rules. I had lived on my own terms, and they never forgave me for it. Later that day, Taryn came to the hospital. She brought flowers and a bottle of lotion like nothing had happened. She smiled like this was a casual visit. But I was ready. She sat down beside me, adjusting the hem of her coat. "It's really amazing how far you've come. We were so scared, Selah. You have no idea." I looked her straight in the eye. "No, you were relieved. You thought it was over. You told them to pull the plug." Her smile faltered. She looked around, then lowered her voice. "That's not fair. We didn't know if you'd wake up. We were just trying to think about Kieran." I didn't blink. "You weren't thinking about him. You were thinking about how inconvenient I've always been." She started to respond, but I raised my hand. I wasn't finished. "You tried to write me off, but he didn't. He sat next to me every single day and wrote down every word you said. Want to hear it?" She stood up quickly, face pale. "I didn't mean, I know exactly what you meant." She left the room without another word. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. 2 days later, my mother visited. She brought a Bible and her favorite cross necklace. She kissed my forehead and told me God had delivered a miracle. "You were gone, and now you're back. The Lord has plans for you." I let her speak, holding the necklace in her hand like it was proof she had been righteous all along. Then I asked her the question that had been sitting on my tongue for weeks. "Why didn't you believe in me?" She looked stunned. "I did. I prayed for you every day. But you told them I needed to be fixed. You said I was a mistake." She looked away. "I was afraid," she whispered. "Afraid you wouldn't make it. Afraid of what would happen to Kieran. I thought maybe it would be easier if... You don't get to decide what's easier for my son." I said. He didn't want a new life. He wanted me. And he's the only reason I'm here. My mother nodded slowly, but she said nothing else. There was nothing left to say. The truth was no longer silent. My voice was back, and I was going to use it. Recovery was slow. I had to relearn how to walk, how to speak without slurring, how to hold a spoon steady in my hand. There were days when my legs gave out and nights when the pain kept me from sleeping, but I didn't complain. I had fought too hard to be here. I wasn't going to waste a second. Kieran was with me every step of the way. He helped me practice flashcards for speech therapy. He held my hand in the hallway when I was afraid to take that first step on shaky legs. He carried my water bottle, zipped up my coat, and waited patiently as I fumbled with buttons and laces. I knew it wasn't fair for an 11-year-old to carry that much weight, but he never made it feel like a burden. He didn't treat me like I was broken. He treated me like I was coming back, one piece at a time. When I was strong enough to leave the hospital, the doctors called it a triumph of spirit. They said it was rare. They used words like resilient, tenacious, miraculous. But none of those labels mattered to me as much as the look on my son's face when I walked through the front door of our apartment again, holding his hand upright, alive. I framed the drawing he had made for me, the one of the mother in the hospital bed reaching for her son. I hung it in the hallway across from my bedroom door. Every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to sleep, I see it. It reminds me of the moment I decided to live again. A few weeks after I came home, I sat down with Kieran on the couch and asked to read his notebook again. This time, I read every single page without flinching. Page after page, I saw the words that were meant to bury me. Condescending, heartless statements from the people who were supposed to love me. Taryn's lists of why she believed I wasn't fit to raise Kieran. Velma's quiet consent and rehearsed logic, all written down in my son's careful handwriting. When I finished, I closed the notebook and looked at him. He was watching me, waiting. "You wrote all of this," I said. He nodded. "I didn't want them to pretend later. I wanted you to know what they said when they thought you were gone." I took a breath, steadying my voice. "You gave me my truth back." He smiled. "I just didn't want you to feel alone." That's what stayed with me more than anything. Not the betrayal, not the bitterness, but the love of one child who saw me, even when I couldn't respond, who defended me when I had no voice, who never doubted that I would come back, even when everyone else did. I didn't confront my family again after that. I didn't need to. The truth was out. The silence had been broken. Taryn stopped calling. Velma sent letters, but I didn't open them. Some people say forgiveness is necessary for healing, but I believe honesty is what matters more. I don't carry hate. I carry awareness, and I carry pride. Not the kind that's loud or defiant, but the quiet, steady kind that comes from knowing I fought for my life, and won. That I raised a son strong enough to hold on to hope when the world told him to let go. Today our lives are simpler. I still walk with a slight limp. I still go to therapy twice a week, but our home is filled with light again. I cook breakfast while Kieran tells me about his latest story. He still writes in his notebook, but now it's filled with fiction and ideas and plans for his future. He wants to be a writer. He already is. I asked him recently why he wrote everything down during those weeks in the hospital, why he chose to remember the worst things people said. His answer was simple. So they can't change the story later. You get to own it now. And he was right. This is my story, a story of survival, betrayal, and the strength of a child's love. A story about what happens when the world thinks you're gone, but one person holds on hard enough to pull you back. So if you've ever felt unheard, if you've ever felt like the people who should have protected you gave up too soon, I want you to remember something. It only takes one person to believe in you. And sometimes that one person is enough to bring you all the way back. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt silenced, dismissed, or underestimated, I hope you carry this with you. You are not alone. Your voice matters. And sometimes the people who believe in you most are the quietest ones in the room. If you felt something while watching, do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it and leave a comment below. I read everyone. Tell me your story. Tell me who believed in you when no one else did. And if you want more stories that speak truth, pain, and power, subscribe to the channel. There's more coming. Stories that need to be told, voices that deserve to be heard. Thank you for being here.